I welcome you to a brand new 2025, and this is Uganda Diaspora Show here on Civic Space TV. My name is Lynn Komjisha. Today, I have with me Albert Bakasara, I have Brian Kwesiga, and of course, Miriam Chomugasho. And we'll be taking a look, more like reviewing the inaugural Ministry of Foreign Affairs Diaspora Convention review. There's so much happening in Uganda. As you might be aware, we are hosting a delegation from the AU countries and heads of state and government, and of course, ministers. We are trying to address agriculture related issues across the continent. It's going on in Munyonyo. But on a sad note, we lost two members of parliament this week. We lost Honorable Mohammed Segirinya. We also lost Margaret Babadiri. They died this week, and they'll be laid to rest sometime later. We also saw a lot happening. Our tweeting general, most of you know him. He has deleted his Twitter account, or commonly known as X account, and is no longer going to be tweeting after threatening Congo, apparently. There's so much, there's a lot has been going on with the tweeting general. So he has deleted his account, but we do not know for how long. Away from that, there's a lot of stuff happening in Uganda. We're praying for the 2026 general elections. And we're trying to see how we can prepare ourselves there. I don't know what's happening. Those of you who are in Uganda, I would really love to ask Brian and Miriam and Albert your experiences when you're on holiday in Uganda and what you would want to talk about. So I'll begin with you, Brian. Briefly, before we get into the Diaspora Convention, can you tell us what experience has it been for you in Uganda, back home, really?
We are here enjoying the beautiful sun and the beautiful country. The things you're talking about of the tweeting general, we are not aware. It's you people in Kampala who have those issues. For us, we don't even know what Twitter is.
Oh
We're here
dear.
enjoying God's blessings.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I wanted to really pick your mind on the issues affecting Uganda as from your diaspora lens.
I think it's the general problems we all know about. I think issues of infrastructure. Infrastructure could be better in the country. I think driving around Uganda or just seeing around the country, there's a sense that we could do more in terms of how the country is organized, in terms of the infrastructure, in terms of
Right.
how we drive, those kind of things that would make Uganda more appealing destination than it already is.
Mm-hmm. All right. Albert, before I can come to Miriam, Albert, I understand you had quite an experience. Would you mind sharing a few of those?
Thank you, Lynn. Thank you so much. Morning, and Brian, happy belated birthday, happy New Year, happy everything. I don't think the lens, the diaspora lens that you're asking about, works in Uganda. Lynn.
Oh,
So it does now. At least it did not for me.
okay.
And I was prepared as soon as I landed, and I kind of adjusted. Let me actually pull over and park somewhere so we can hear each other.
Mm.
So I kind of adjusted. I folded my lens and diaspora lens and put it away, and looked at Uganda as Uganda. So the experience, obviously, it's a mixed bag, as Brian was beginning to say. I don't even think that it's we could do more as Uganda. I think we owe it to ourselves. We owe it to the new generation of young people that I was looking at, and we owe them this. We owe them that much to fix that place.
Right.
Other than that, like I said, I never used the diaspora lens, so I had a very good experience because I made it a point to have a good experience. I think in Uganda now, if you have to be honest, the good experience, you give it to yourself. If you're looking for the bad, there's plenty of it, and you'll find it almost every time. You'll find it. Okay. And then
I,
if
I
you
like
just
Albert, I like your mindset. When you step into Uganda, think and behave like Uganda. When you leave,
think
then
absolutely,
yeah,
this is not. I mean, yes, I'm being facetious, but I'm also being real because my nephew, an entrant at Makerere, this is his first year. He said, "No, no, 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 Uncle, you're confusing the drivers." This is when we're walking in Kampala. He said, "You don't run, you walk calmly, and then
yeah,
you give them a choice whether to hit you or to stop." And I was like, "Excuse me."
right.
And but that was his advice. He said, if you run, you're confusing the drivers and the border borders.
Mm,
And really that stayed with me. So after that, I started crossing the street walking instead of running for my life.
right.
And here I am. I'm alive. I survived. So,
Okay, okay, interesting. Miriam, over to you. What, from your diaspora lens, a look at Uganda?
Lynn,
Oh, not just
Albert
Uganda.
is
Oh,
teaching me. Yes, Albert is teaching me bad manners of looking at Uganda with that pessimistic kind of view. Because I think we should keep challenging ourselves at every other level. Like, we can do better. We all know we can do better. Of course, Uganda is nice. And when you're coming home, it's about home. It's the experience, it's the people, even if things are really grim, you always have that fun moment, when you reconnect with your people, the nostalgia, like you eating the food you've been missing and all that. So all that good side and the weather, so all that good side is always there. But then again, when you are moving like on the road and you see like there are no crossings, like pedestrians, you can't cross the road. You are at the
mm,
mercy of anybody in front of you, whether it's the border or the driver. And then when you really see like the only thing that really shocked me, I mean, the rest it's the familiar thing. We can't pretend that we don't know what to expect because we are Ugandan anyway. We know what it's there. But there are
right.
things which really still shock you, like the way life is cheap. You see a border person is knocked, they are carrying a pedestrian, a person is injured, people keep moving around like nothing has happened. And it's like, what else can they do? And then you really wonder, this is a person, they have their family, they have their kids and their friends and their life, but life is lost on the road like that, and life, other people keep moving. Like, there is that pessimistic outlook about life, which I think something better can be done. I think a lot of things are really like work in progress. We can't say everything is really bad. I was happy. I come from Western Uganda, so when you are driving across now, the roads have improved. The stopovers really look nice, and you find the basic amenities there, which is a big improvement. And there are a few factories here and there, though they are just milk processing plants and whatever. I mean, we can do better, but at least you say that something is coming up and promising. But again, when you see the number of people who are like looking for jobs, looking for money for upkeep, there is always that depressing side of it that also makes you wish that you wish your leaders could really wake up somehow.
Right, right. Interesting. I'm glad that you all noticed a couple of things here and there. At least it's not all hope is lost.
Mm.
So let's come back to our conversation. But before that, Brian, maybe if I could alert you, our tweeting general closed his Twitter account about 2 days ago, or one, if I remember correctly. But according to Andrew Mwenda, they are going to start the Muhozi Mwenda Dialogue. It's a podcast. It will be hosted by Mwenda, and they're going to delve into history and strategic level discussions on current affairs. Apparently, our first episode is going to air on the 28th of January, and it will be on YouTube and other stations. So they're going to have a conversation that will redefine how we engage on critical matters affecting Uganda and the region at large. So there you have it. Hopefully, it will be sustainable. but that's not our topic for the day. I want us to review the inaugural Minister of Foreign Affairs Diaspora Convention that happened from the 18th to the 19th of December. We're looking at a theme that said mobilizing Uganda's diaspora for socioeconomic transformation, and they were looking for ways, very many ways to maximize remittances amid exploitation is one of the areas, and it is thought that about 1.4 billion Uganda shilling, no trillion, sorry, billion comes into the country as remittances from the diaspora community, and that amounts to about 3% of Uganda's GDP. So I want to begin with Brian. Brian, you were heavily vested in this conversion. I'd like to pick your mind on generally, first of all, generally, let's look at the whole idea of this conversion. Does it address the matters that the diaspora faces, or was it a good gesture, or is it another conversion that most ministries hold and leave it at that?
No, I think it was a good starting point. It's a platform. It's a good platform where these issues that members of the diaspora have, that they want to communicate to the policymakers, and what the policymakers want to communicate to the diaspora. It's a good platform for dialogue. It was the first one. So, in my opinion, for a first event, I think they did well. For the little time they had to mobilize the diaspora, less than a month, I think they did exceedingly well. With less than 6 hours after the convention, they set out a form for people to give feedback. I thought that was good. UNA does not do that, at least not that quickly. I was there with Miriam the whole time. I think we turned her from a critic to a supporter. We're soon going to tell her for her a yellow dress. But in all seriousness, I think it was a good first start. If we can build upon it, I wrote an article about my opinion in terms of what the hits and misses were, in terms of what could be done better. I think 2 days was too short. I think people in the diaspora didn't get enough time to air their views. I think even towards the end of the second session, the second day, they were running out of time, so they didn't get a chance to put questions of the speakers of the panels. So they just wrote down the questions. So yeah, in terms of time, I think it could be 3 days, and if they could perhaps give the aspirants more time to speak, I think that would make a good convention even better.
Okay, so I get it. Albert, yes, Albert, please go ahead.
Well, in full disclosure, I did not attend the convention, but before we before the convention, we did talk to some of the people who were organizing this convention. So it's a good step, as Brian said. But we have, again, like I said, we have to do better by our people. The people were on this very show, and we gave them some of the hints and some of the do's that would make the diaspora participation worth people's time. And one of them was you give them time. I remember saying, please listen more than you talk, because every time they've done these things, especially when they come here, they just talk at us, literally, because they sit on a podium and just talk at us. And then when it comes, they give us 1 or 2 minutes of speaking or even asking a question. So it's unfortunate, as Brian is saying, that they didn't even get to the diaspora to ask questions. They didn't have time for that. But somehow they had time for speech after speech from bureaucrats and government officials, this minister, this, that. It's unfortunate. We did tell them. So I know my brother Brian is an incrementalist. Every step is a step. Yes, in reality, it's true. But we have to do better. If you've already been told by the diasporians, what will make this event worth their time? Why won't you do it? Then there was also the lack of a live streaming for the event. I mean, we've done this forever. We do these conventions, the Watoro do them, Banyachigezi do them, Baganda do them, UNA does them. It's really unfortunate that they could not have a live stream, even when they knew that the audience they want to reach, the room they had in Munyonyo, probably had a 0.5% of the people that they wanted to talk to. So why won't you open it up and give them a forum to participate? So those are some of the things that um, really puzzle me. Um, because it's not like our people don't know what to do. It's not like we have not told them what to do or how to have this as an effective platform. They just choose not to. So I am not as optimistic as Brian that this is somehow a first step and we will give input and they will listen to us and the next one will be better. Because if they were going to listen to us, they should have started by just those couple of things because we had these issues, we talked about them before the convention and they could have rectified them. There was no reason why they couldn't have a live stream for the event. There was no reason why they could not make time for more diasporans to have input in that convention. But they didn't. So I'm vindicated because I actually chose to attend another forum that was beginning the day after in Fort Portal. And I thought that was actually a very, very fulfilling engagement. It's called the Toro People's Conference. It happens every year around Christmas. And I chose to go hang out with the elders of Toro instead of the people who really, in my humble opinion, did not want to hear what I have to say. I really would have been frustrated if I had been in
Maybe,
Munyonyo and no one gave me a chance to even ask a question. I really would have been frustrated. So it
maybe,
looks like I made the right choice.
maybe Albert, you're biased because Toro is home anyway.
No. I mean, when we're on the ground, we have limited time. So you kind of pick and choose on where to spend your time and on what events and stuff. Uh, I just thought that maybe there would be a live stream. I will reach Toro. I put on internet, unlimited internet, waiting for the link to participate so I could do both. Uh, they just didn't give me that option. So I physically attended the Toro conference because that's where I was. But I would have participated if there was a link for us to participate.
Yeah, this is Brian. If I may chime in, it's not that people didn't ask questions. People asked questions. What I said was on the second day, on the last day, we ran out of time to ask questions. But on the first day, people asked questions until there were no more questions. On the second day, towards the end, people ran out of time to ask questions. Uh, now, that was just a point of clarification. Then the other thing is the way I look at these things is any chance people get a chance to interact, even if someone does not get a microphone and stand on the podium and ask a question and speak, but even informally, meeting policymakers in the corridors and sharing views, to me, that is always a good thing. Whenever that happens, more of that should be encouraged. What we are trying here to encourage is dialogue. So, yeah.
Miriam, over to you.
Yeah, Brian is always optimistic, but I also want to share my frustration with Albert. We could have done better, even with the very few resources and even a little time to organize. There are things that could have been fixed that uh, definitely nobody paid attention to, like the live streaming that is really free, that is as easy as anything these days. So there is no excuse for that. And to make matters worse, when we were registering, because they knew most people won't make it, and if you are talking to diaspora, you know that even less than 1% of the people from out there are able to make it back home for Christmas. So you knew that most of the audience you are targeting is not around in that room. And they even registered us saying, are you attending virtually or physically? So that was a given, but it didn't happen. So if you can't even make such a basics really work, what do you expect to achieve? It's like you're trying a lot and you're wasting your time because the implementation lacks the basics. But add on even what Albert said about that time, it was a talk shop. Yes, they were talking to us, like talking down on us. because it was all about police introducing themselves. Stuff here that you could just scroll on the website and see. That's what dominated 90% of the forum. Okay, we appreciate that there is an initiative and someone really took in time to organize, and they thought that it's a necessary thing that to organize and have that interaction. But if they don't give us time to speak and interact with them and share our views to them, and they are also feeding us what we already know, that's also another waste of time, because I thought they were there to listen from us. Brian, what you are saying, like they gave the people were given time. It was just a small bit at the end, and even just a few minutes. So only like one, two, three, six people were able to ask questions. You can imagine how many people were there and were ready to ask questions and who couldn't get the opportunity. Another thing, I think even the conference could have been organized better if they had maybe put in like separate meetings in meeting rooms, people who are interested in ABCD. For us, it's about opportunities. What can you invest in? They could have separated us, and after like the general plenary, and we go in separate rooms. Every person picks their interest areas, so that we can have some interactions in areas that we are interested in, and have those deep conversations which would inspire someone and motivate you to come and invest in Uganda. Right now, I can't lie to you that I picked anything beyond what I already knew that I would tell anybody who is interested in investing in Uganda. And then they will say, okay, I heard there is ABCD. The few people they displayed rearing goats and ABCD, I mean, they didn't even tell us the short and the long of it. How did you get? Did you need any funding? How did you get funding? ABCD opportunities for funding in Uganda, local funding, because we know investors, you need a lot to invest. So all that critical information, we didn't have like enough time for that discussion, and the real time for discussion was 1.5 days, which wasn't enough. But we appreciate that at least there was a beginning, and maybe tomorrow we might organize better, but we could have done a lot better. But anyway, Albert said we have to use Ugandan lens, but I think we shouldn't. I think we should we should aspire to really do a lot better than if we can, because this time we can.
Right. Thank you indeed. I want to come back to Brian. Brian, you spoke about a number of issues. You were on one of the panel conversations, and you've also authored From Fear to Opportunity, Rethinking Uganda's Dual Citizenship Laws. But also the recent one you authored is talking about From Promise to Power, Redefining the Role of Uganda's Diaspora. Could you enlighten us a little bit more?
Yeah, sure. Right now, the Diaspora sends 1.4 billion US dollars in remittances to the country. As you've stated, that's 3% of Uganda's GDP. Other countries, Kenya, Ethiopia, Nigeria, their remittances account for a little bit higher of their GDP, 4, 5, 6. I think Uganda's long-term goal is for that to increase 10%. So, and to me, these engagements and what we are pushing for, a revision of the dual citizenship laws, especially for those under 18, granting people in the diaspora the right to vote. Some of those policy changes would go a long way in instituting trust in the diaspora. When I was on a Radio One Spectrum show the other day, what I told people was Ugandans need to feel like they are citizens in the country, not just feel it but act like it. The example Miriam was talking about, when you're driving in Uganda and you see a boda carrying a passenger and the boda falls and people just drive on like nothing has happened. To me, it's a sense of resignation that people have. It's like they've given up on their country. And when I was on the show, I was saying that there's a difference between if you're the owner of a house and the roof is leaking, you do everything in your power to fix that leak. But if it's a maid, they may not do anything. It's not mine. Let the owner. What about it? So Ugandans need to begin acting like this is their country, instead of acting like they are maids in this country. Instead of acting like they are subjects, they need to begin acting like they are citizens. Miriam and Albert will tell you if they like you're in the US and like an accident happens in front of you, people stop their cars, get out of their cars, and try to help and see if people are okay. You know, that sense of ownership is what we are trying to cultivate. And what I'm saying is, if we can work with the government on some of these issues, diaspora right to vote, reforming some of these laws, that makes people in the diaspora feel like they are part of Uganda's national development. They are partners. They are not just people who are sending remittances. That's why remittances are always better than foreign direct investment, better than the official development aid, because when these countries, foreign countries, are in trouble, they'll cut that aid. If their economies are not doing well, they'll cut that aid. Or if Uganda passes a law they don't like, they'll cut that aid. But remittances, people will still send those remittances because they're sending it back to their relatives. So people in diaspora have a vested interest in the development of this country. Even if they are not living here, or a big majority of them, 90% of them, when they die, their bodies will be shipped here. So whether they are dead or alive, they have a vested interest in this country, in its well-being. So they are not just they are more than development partners. They are stakeholders. The other point I was making was, when you look at Africa as a whole, in 2023, the remittances that Africa received was 90 US billion dollars. That's in remittances for the whole of the continent of Africa. That's more than FDI, foreign direct investment, and official development aid combined. So the Africa's diaspora sends more to Africa than these so-called foreign investors and the donors combined. So we are saying that the governments in Africa, not just Uganda, but the governments in Africa should pay as much attention to the diasporas as they pay to foreign investors and foreign governments, because after all, they do contribute more to Africa's development than the foreign investors and foreign governments combined.
Thank you, Brian, for that. Albert, if I could come to you on issues that were raised at the convention, quite a number of them, and of course, Brian was part of them. He's highlighted a number of them. The issue of partnering, of making the diaspora community partners with Ugandan back home. I don't know how that is meant to happen. I don't know how that is supposed to play out. But is it a possibility? And if so, we already have challenges. In one of the articles about that Brian wrote, also in the issues that arose from the convention, where I think the national diaspora policy, which is in the works, how would that work? And would it solve the issues that we are currently facing as a diaspora community?
Thank you, Lynn, for the question. I do applaud Brian, mostly for his persistence and consistency, because the issues that he's raising, we've raised them for a long time. Looks like he actually has took a little break, but now he's back to these issues. Brian advocated so much for some of the diaspora issues when he was active in UNA. And even some of us, when we were in there, we did do the same. I remember writing a similar article in 2021 when I was running for UNA vice presidency, saying we want Uganda to pay attention to us here in the diaspora, but we would like a different kind of attention. And I raised some of this same issues that Brian is raising. I completely agree with what he's saying. Where we differ, or where there's a divergence in our views, is this opportunity that is here for Uganda to collaborate with us in the diaspora is not a permanent opportunity. The door is going to close because, as you've seen, global politics are changing. There will not probably be another influx of immigrants into the US going forward like we had in the past decades. That is going to be closed off. There will be a trickle here and there, but they will never make a coherent unit as we do right now. And as we grow older and our kids step in our feet, they will not have the same attachment that we have to Uganda. So the remittances that Brian is eloquently talking about will decrease. Therefore, it is important to look beyond remittances, to look at investments, like how the government is trying to do it. Except there is a component that is missing in the government's efforts. Brian tried to talk about it a little bit in saying, hey, people need to feel they have an ownership in the country. The government also has a responsibility to make people feel that they have an ownership in the country. So it's a two-way street. We cannot feel Uganda if Uganda does not feel us. If our labels on Kubakeyo, you guys have lenses, and clearly you can even see in the convention that happened at Munyonyo, only two components were involved: social and economic. Not the political. Not the political. Because I remember when we were doing civics a long time ago, those three used to go together, but they dropped the political because they don't want us to talk about that.
Albert,
and yet,
yes, sorry to but maybe in their defense, they were trying not to ride on the political season that we're currently in.
Oh, please. But yeah, I take your point. Yeah, Brian would say that. But the truth is this. All the mess that is going on is political. It's governance. So we could lie to ourselves that somehow, let's invest, let's do that. Investment is an emotional action. Okay. We are a very unique group of people. We are not Americans or Europeans. We're not even Ugandans. I mean, you can't live for 30 years like I have in the US, and somehow you still think as a Ugandan, and you will never be an American either. So we are unique. Uganda, the government and these policymakers and the people technocrats who are trying to appeal to us, they need to realize that. Look at us as a unique group of people with unique interests, with unique values. And if you tap into that, you would have tapped into an emotional way to bring us into Uganda, into these investment opportunities that you're talking about. But this idea of, come invest here, come build a hotel here, come. Some of us would probably do that, but the majority of people in the diaspora will not. And like I said from the beginning of this conversation, this is a very temporary gap that the government has to capture this group of Ugandans. Like Brian said, our kids, so they can come, they feel the ownership of the country. Give them voting rights, give them a say, stop harassing them. All these things are happening. Okay, stop the divide and conquer. Oh, I've picked Albert, now I'm talking to Albert. So I've picked this one. Stop all that nonsense and let us unite and see what can we do. And yes, everything has to be on the table, not just economic and social. Even politics have to be on the issue. And I remember in your introduction, you talked about tweeting in general. Maybe we'll get there, or maybe we will not. But yes, all that matters. All that matters. You cannot ask me to be your ambassador here in the US, because I am, whether you like it or not. And then I meet an American and I have to explain what the tweeting general is tweeting. I don't want to do that. I want to be able to talk to them about the experiences that I had in Toro, the tourism industry, the booming economic this and that. I don't want to be explaining what is going on in somebody's head. Okay, so that matters. We cannot just be saying, "Oh, invest here, in economic, social." No, if the politics are broken, and they are, let's talk about fixing that too. Because a lot of investing, like I said, is an emotional action. People will forego a money opportunity in Uganda and invest their money in New York because they hate a government policy or because they don't feel attachment to that. They will forego the money. Okay? Everyone is not profit driven, the way Uganda makes it look like, oh no, the next it's a no brainer. You can make 16% here, you're making 4% there, because that's what I saw when I attended one of the presentations at the UNA convention recently in Maryland. One of the speakers oh, it's a no brainer. How can you do that? How can you waste your money here, invest it here, when we can give you this much return? And I'm thinking, oh, you're missing a big picture here. Some people are very content in getting 4 or 5% on their money than investing it in an environment that is so hostile to them, that's so hostile to their people. Yeah. So I'll stop there and let others are doing. Thank you.
Right. Miriam, let's hear from you. Still, I asked the question of because it comes up very many times that there's need for a partnership between the government of Uganda and the diaspora, because we've continuously talked about the love-hate relationship therein. And so I ask myself, will the conventions going, because this is inaugural and they're saying it's going to be an annual thing, do you think this is a good start for that partnership, for that relationship to at least stick to one end of either love or hate?
I wouldn't call it love or hate, and for partnership, yes, we are already partners. We are naturally partners. And to add on what Albert said, patriotism is really a feeling. Nobody forces you to be patriotic, whatsoever, whether they make you sing or wear the flag or whatever. They can't make you have feeling for your country if it's not coming from your heart. And like Albert said, if you make a decision to invest in Uganda, you wouldn't be investing just because you think you're gonna make profit, but it's something you will really have to do and make and thinking that you are going to make your country better, thinking that maybe you will enable people get employment or just also contribute something to the nation building. So it's like you are investing back home. It's like you are cleaning the road back in your village. It's Burundi. So investment, okay, the profit point is there, but beyond that, it's about patriotism. It's about our feeling to do something back home. So that's already a big interest that the government really needs to fix a few things to tap into that. If they are going to attract investments from the diaspora, but they are failing. And Albert said, yes, the governance thing. You can't have economic investment without governance. And we can't shy away from the politics. It's a reality. It's our reality. So imagine if today I start building a factory in Oluwelo and in the next year I want to come to Uganda because there is elections and I can't cross the Entebbe airport, maybe because I made a statement which annoyed some journal or something like that. So those are issues we really have to talk about. And if the government is not ready to face that and engage us head on about the political question, then we don't even have a way forward. Because most of the people who really go outside the country, I think what you refer to as a love hate relationship is like a relationship had gone somehow sour with the politics. But that can be fixed. We can say, okay, ABCD was there, but today we guarantee if you come here, nobody will touch you or something. If you say this, I mean, we can ensure transparency, we can do all that. But again, you also have to not only talk, but walk the talk. So if you are saying you can't do something, but tomorrow you are abducting Ugandan citizens from Kenya, then that's another thing. And we have to think about it before you even get your paycheck and try to invest it in Uganda, because will the border be closed before you come in or after you have left or after you have entered and then you can't go out? So Ugandan governance question should be one of the headlines. I mean, they even talked about Brian talked about the diaspora voting. We have discussed it a lot of many times here on this show. Nobody seems to be interested. Today there is this week's. I think it ends on January 25th. There is voter register review. I don't think even Albert is still a registered voter in Uganda. If he's not, did you check your name on the register? And Brian too. So those are things like, are we part of Uganda? How can I invest in a country which doesn't even think about me as a citizen? And I was one of the experiences I also had when I was I'm still in Kampala. So one of my experiences during these holidays, I had that today the girls we call kadamas. I hate calling them that, but those girls who went in the Middle East to do casual labor because they couldn't get jobs in Uganda. Those are the lead influencers today on the social scene, whether the social or the economic, because they have the money to spend. And if they like, if you are an artist, you know you have to tap into that niche if you are to make an impact. So those are the things, and these people are still Ugandans. They could have gone to the Middle East because they can't get jobs in Uganda, but they are still Ugandans at heart, and the government should consider them as such. And while we are talking about that, of course, Brian hinted on the infrastructure. That's the basic. So you can't call people to invest in Uganda when they are in Canada when you don't have internet that works. How are they going to monitor their investments? So those are the things. But I would have wished see much more. I wish we had such a discussions on the convention when we met the government officials. If they had promised that they're improving the internet, if they had promised that the politics won't interfere with whoever is trying to invest, if they had promised us that the diaspora would be a part of government policy making decisions, because I think we are a constituency which deserves a full ministry. We don't deserve these desks which keep changing hosts every other time. The diaspora should be, we are a big constituency, like Brian said, we're bringing in a lot of money, and we are goodwill ambassadors and all that. I think we deserve like a state ministry which can handle only diaspora issues, to not these offices. One day it's the office of the president, another day you hear the prime minister, another day this and that. So we don't have any central center where we can have inquiries which can address the needs for the diaspora community. And that is also something which makes the coordination and all that communication break down. The way they are organizing even this convention, it really shows how disorganized they are on the side of the government. I think they also need to straighten out that, including the governance question. And those should be the starters. We should start from there if we are to do something tangible. Thank you.
Indeed, if we have to do anything tangible, we ought to listen to the voices of the diaspora, and this keeps coming up because it feels like the diaspora community is not being heard. Some sections are being heard, but not paid attention to. So I think it remains to be addressed. Brian, I come back to you, and from what I gather in that convention, the PS Ministry of Finance, that is Ramadan Gobi, highlighted key areas that needed the diaspora to pay attention to. He said that you need to lead the change. Lead the church by investing in Uganda's future, and he highlighted areas that are affordable housing and tourism, digital transformation, capital markets, export promotion, investment. Now, if we are to look at these challenges, and Albert has said the political was ignored, yet it all begins with governance. Now, if we are to focus on these key areas as diaspora and of course Uganda at large, without the issue of governance, Brian, where do you see the diaspora pay attention to? Because one, they need their voices heard. Two, they want to vote. They want to be included in the voting, and that has been an issue for a long time. I don't know if that was addressed during the convention. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about it. Three, with all these issues still glaring, does the diaspora feel included in the running and the day-to-day activities of Uganda?
Thank you, Lynn. I think whether diaspora feels included, whether they feel they are part of Uganda, I think depends on individual members of the diaspora. I don't think there's a universal answer. that applies to everyone. I think it depends on how often they visit Uganda, how often they listen to Uganda news. It depends, I think, on their political views. It depends on very many factors. Um, I think the intention of the organizers of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs was to try to talk about things that unite us, and not so much not talk about politics, but try to avoid issues that may divide us as a people. I think if you go to parents and you say you can say the same thing and say it differently. I think if you call a parents teachers association meeting and say, hey parents, what should we do as parents to make sure our students do well at UNEB or PRE? You get all kinds of views, and I think the response will generally be positive because every parent wants their kids to do well, and you can mobilize the community around that issue. Now, if you call the same meeting and you say, hey, how can we help our kids succeed in a way that government has failed? I think that may elicit different reactions because now you may put the parents who may be supportive of the government or who hold position in the government on the defensive. So I think the intention of the organizers, and I think the way I like approaching issues is to focus on the things that tend to unite people because there are all kinds of things that divide people. And I think one of the comments that was made during the convention by Drake and Mr. Bagire, the PS at Foreign Affairs, was like, Bagire said he's a Musoga and he has been invited to many Toegaite conventions, but he has never gone because when as soon as he steps out of Uganda, he's no longer Musoga, he's a Ugandan. Now, I don't want to get into that debate. I understand, of course, Albert is a former chairman of the Toro American Association, so I attended the very first Toro American Association in DC in 2015. So I do understand the importance that these cultural groups, for example, play, especially in the diaspora, when they're afraid of their kids losing their mother tongues and that kind of stuff. But back to the point, I think why that theme was chosen was to try to avoid potentially divisive topics. That's all. And but of course, politics you can't separate it from these issues. In terms of what issues were discussed or whether the issue of voting was raised, yes, it was. And the head of legal affairs at the Electoral Commission was present, and they gave a presentation. And to me, that was part of the why such a convention is useful, because when we have our UNA conventions, we don't get representatives from the Electoral Commission. We get representatives from the Uganda Investment Authority, Uganda Tourism Board, and the like, but not from the Electoral Commission. So I think the advantage of having such a convention in Uganda is you are able to have much more participants who deal on these issues on the ground. And that is always a useful step. I don't know if I answered your question or if you feel there's something I may have missed. Lynn, you are still there?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Sorry, I was saying, Brian, I was saying that it's all right. Let's see what Miriam and Albert have to say about the same questions. Albert was asking the PS of the Ministry of Finance highlighted areas that he expects diaspora to invest in. And my questions were to Brian and all of you that really, with all the unanswered questions that still exist, will the diaspora community be able to pay attention to these key areas that the country expects you to pay attention to?
Yes and no. In my humble opinion, the people who are keen and can stomach the risk of investing in Uganda are already doing so. But I think the presentations like the one you're talking about, they miss the fact that the point that I've been making all along. By not showing, I don't want to call it the sincerity in their engagement, or as Brian says, though, we don't want to rub people the wrong way, we don't want to have any conflicts himself. Some of these matters are contentious. So we should not be thinking of shying away from those debates because somehow they may rub this person or this politician the wrong way. This is our country, and again goes back to what Brian was talking about, ownership. You cannot tell me that I belong, as a child, I belong to this home, and I should regard it as mine, if I have no say in some of the important matters, but you just want me to tend the yard and take the goats and cows and bring them back in. No, no, I want to have a say in everything we're doing, contentious and non-contentious. So again, the people who are asking us to come invest, somebody should let them know that those of us who can stomach the risk of investing in Uganda are already doing that, and we don't even need a conference for us to do that. I'll give you a good example. When I was on the ground in Fort Patrol, I toured a whole lot of investment opportunities, and some were very impressive projects. My mentor, Ambassador Katenta Puli, came and picked me up, from a retired now, came and picked me up and, from my home and took me to tour his project. The old man at 85 has over 20 acres of Hass avocados that he's growing in Fort Portal. And he was talking to me about investing, about markets, about all this kind of stuff. And I'm listening. So it's not like we are lacking knowledge of these investment opportunities in Uganda. But again, in those conversations, as we were touring the farm, everything will turn back to politics. And he, of all people, knows the politics of Uganda and has been has had a front seat for a long, long time. So yeah, even in those conversations, you look and you'll see the bottlenecks, and they will all be political, including markets. Because they were asked, okay, Apuli, now you have all these avocados. Where's the market? And he gave a narration of where the market is and what are the bottlenecks and the problems in between. And I guarantee you, and I'm not going to expose that private conversation here, but everything he said was political. Everything he said was political. So imagine, and this is a man who went to the bush and fought and served the government and now retired. Now imagine if you call me, who, if I'm not aware of how Uganda works and all that kind of stuff, and you come and say, oh, come and invest, and oh, we're going to grow Hass avocados, and they come and spend my money and they put up 50 acres of avocado, which he has been able to do in less than 7 years. Let's imagine you or me or Miriam or Brian is doing that. And then you get to the point of harvesting. Then you run into the political impediments that he was describing to me. Then what do? How do you regain, how do you get that money back for your children? So this is what we're talking about. It's not like people do not know where to invest. But again, these conversations that Brian says are difficult and maybe they're contentious will have to be had if we really are going to be looked at and even us ourselves start behaving as owners of Uganda. If other people own Uganda, yeah, then they will keep having a problem trying to convince us that Uganda also belongs to us. So I'll stop there.
Okay, thank you, Albert. Miriam, what say you?
I can't. I mean, Albert said it all. I mean, if these people think Uganda belongs to us, there has to be that relationship. What are they doing to make us feel we belong? Because you can't really, like, out of the blue. It's like you're trying to milk the cow you don't feed. You don't even know where it feeds or how it's feeding or the problems they face and how they could solve them. So if the politics is really crooked, like for instance, can you invest in a country where you know half of the money is going to be stolen? Can you invest in infrastructure which doesn't function? Can you invest when you know you don't know how much tax you are going to pay because someone is going to ask a bribe over and over and over? So those are the things, and we need to have a discussion about it. We need to have some assurance of sorts that whatever you are investing in, your returns are going to be safe, and the corruption is being wind out and all that, and there has to be that environment which is going to even attract yeah, us to call upon other outside investors, because the Ugandans in diaspora themselves might not be having the enough investment or the skills or the technology to invest in Uganda, but they can bring in other people. They can act as the go-betweens to bring more investors to Uganda. And to add on that point, Brian, I remember when we were in the convention, someone was trying to tell us to correct our data, like a database of sorts and all that. Then I remember, Lynn, like some time back, we had a discussion with Minister of Foreign Affairs, and they are saying the embassy is going to profile, yeah, like create a database
Yeah.
of skilled Ugandans abroad. And those people, whenever they need like special skills people or whatever, they can call upon such a people to come and do work in Uganda, or just bring their advice or consultancy to the project at hand. But I don't know how that project ended. I don't know if, because when we were there, when we were in the convention, someone was trying to pass through that information, but they never explained it like I expected. So I even left that convention without an idea what they were trying to do. And that those are the gaps. Can we, if you say I need to see doctors, specialists who are in diaspora, and see how they can support the Mulago hospital, any referral hospital in those skills we don't have, or the technology, how can we do technology transfer, or how can we attract investment in those aspects, or even education, how can we train some people here in those special skills that we lack. So if you
Yeah.
don't really engage the right people, if you don't have that specific conversation in that form, or engage the people and tell them how you plan to do it, or they advise you, or you share the ideas, how do you expect them to invest their skills and their knowledge into Uganda? So investment, we shouldn't look at the remittances per se. We don't have to, it doesn't have to be the money. There are skills, there are also relationships. There is a lot we can invest back in Uganda. But we need the bridges, we need the channels, we need that relationship which will enable that function, that thing to function properly, that network to function normally.
Right. 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 Thank you, Miriam. Again, I want to come back to Brian and Miriam. Actually, you attended the convention. Were any issues of diaspora voting raised and answered? And anyway, if they were not, do we have a chance that this time round the diaspora is going to vote? Brian, anything you might know that we don't?
Yeah, like I mentioned, the Electoral Commission presented on the second day. It was one of the agencies that presented on the second day, and unfortunately, we didn't get time to ask follow-up questions. Basically, what the head of the legal Electoral Commission was saying was that would need Parliament would need to pass some kind of law to enable that. But that's just a legal opinion. A legal opinion I happen to disagree with. I've consulted some lawyers, and I've said that's not true because, as you know, in Stephen I forget his Kalari, Stephen Kalari versus Attorney General, the government lost the case, and the High Court ruled that the diaspora and prisoners have the right to vote. And the government didn't appeal, so they basically accepted that legal argument. They never, at the time, asserted that, oh, the law doesn't allow. No, it's just a new argument they are trying to bring up now. But from the consultations I've done with some lawyers, they don't have legal standing. And in fact, on November 5th, I wrote to the Electoral Commission. My lawyer, I should say, my lawyer wrote on my behalf to the Electoral Commission. The Electoral Commission acknowledged receiving that letter on November 7th, but we've not heard back from them. And had I been given a chance to ask a question, that would have been the question that I've asked, whether they are going to respond to my letter. But irrespective of whether they respond or not, we will follow it up in court uh, in the next couple of months if they don't. If we don't see substantive movement on the ground to show that they are moving in that direction. Because the court has ruled that we have the right to vote, that the Electoral Commission should do everything in its power to make sure that we vote. So if they don't do it, they're in contempt of court and would be moving in that direction. We
Right.
would be banging the table. For now, we are still trying the diplomatic route.
Okay, we still have a few months. Miriam.
I'm happy to hear Brian banging a table for the first time. Brian, that's a good job. And I don't know what you said, yeah, as Center for Constitutional Governance, which also does public litigation on public interest cases. We are also planning to put the Electoral Commission in court on the Ministry of Justice and Constitutional Affairs about the diaspora vote because they are disenfranchising the Ugandans. It's not only the diaspora but also Ugandans in prison as per the court ruling about that Kerari case that Brian quoted. So, Brian, thanks, and we will be so happy to work together on that one. And I'm so happy to hear you challenging the.
Well, interesting. I don't know if Albert has anything to say on that before we can look at something else.
No, no, no. I'm with Miriam. We're applauding Brian. Brian, let me know if I can write a friend of the court letter. Uh, to support you. But yes, and again, I agree that this is a new argument that they're presenting. And by the way, it's not the only one. I think in this very discussion, when we raised that matter, somebody, I remember, I think it was from the president's office, they said, oh, we don't know where you are as diasporians. We need you to register so you can make your presence felt. And I remember challenging that. So there are a whole bunch of other arguments that are being made, but really the valid argument is the government has made a conclusion, which is not that far-fetched, that in the diaspora, most of the people who are there are not people who are sympathetic to the government. And really, that's the problem.
Right.
Whether they want to admit it or not. So they keep holding on to this argument and that argument. Because, I mean, how can somebody say that they don't know where we are? Are you kidding me? They're issuing us IDs left and right. Really? In those left IDs, we don't tell you where we were born and where our home in Uganda is? And yet you're asking us
Albert,
letters of LC1 and all that kind of stuff? So it's disingenuous.
Albert, I think that's why the PS Minister of Finance was calling for investment in digital transformation, because we still have huge challenges in data collection and data related issues. So as a country, we are lacking in that area. So I understand when they say they do not know where you guys are. Anyway, still relatedly, and I want to begin with you, Brian, again. In still about the Diaspora Convention, there was a draft of the National Diaspora Policy in 2013, and maybe you were aware of it, or you know some things about it, and they're saying that it is still in the making. The national diaspora policy is in the works. The question here is, why is it taking long? What is going to change from the draft of 2013 and the one that is currently ongoing?
Yeah, so the one of 2012, 2013 is basically out of date because the population of the diaspora at that time was probably maybe 600,000. We're now over 2 million. We're no longer as distributed in North America and Europe as where a big chunk now is in the Middle East. So all that has to be taken into consideration. But a big part of the diaspora policy formation is, of course, knowing how many Ugandans are outside of Uganda. And the way you go about that is you do what is called a mapping exercise. Like you actually travel to these countries and do kind of like a census of the Ugandans out there. So that's why it takes a long time. They are about to start on that process. This diaspora process formation and mapping exercises, they are mostly funded by the donor communities, UNDP, IOM, and all that. Other countries have done it, and those countries that have done it it's basically, like I mentioned in the show previously, these are in a way policies that are driven at a higher level. They're not just national policies, but they're driven by the African Union as well. Because as you know, the African Union defines the diaspora as its sixth region. So as part of that, of incorporating the diaspora into the individual countries' national development plans, is making sure diasporans can vote, making sure they have dual citizenship, making sure the remittances are structured in such a way that it benefits the whole African country. So it's a process that they just have to go through. It will take time. Uh, but yeah, that's just what it is. Basically, it's really an update of the previous policy, but they kind of have to do it from the ground up again.
Mhm, mhm. Okay. And what would be in this policy? Maybe key highlights if you know any.
So, like the previous policy, for example, had called for a state minister for diaspora affairs. It had vaguely talked about potential of course, the right of diasporans to vote, representation in parliament. It had called for what it called diaspora national diaspora services board, to be like a semi-autonomous body, like UCDA, like Uganda Tourism Board. But with rationalization going on, I don't know how that will be affected. But that kind of thing, diaspora bonds and a lot of those other policies. I'll be happy to share with you the draft I have from a couple of years back with you.
Right. Great, great. Miriam, do you think this national diaspora policy would address any of these issues? And already we are seeing challenges with
Yes, I think even the sorry.
yeah, with being listened to as a diaspora community and addressing most of our pressing issues. Would that would the policy really maybe address these issues? Do we really need a policy before we can harmonize the issues affecting the diaspora?
Yes, the policy, as we all know, is a guiding framework. So if you don't have the policy on ground, the policy framework, which would guide the laws and the implementation, then you can't function on anything. So I was going to tell Brian that the reason that the making of the policy and whatever is taken slowly or being delayed is because they don't give they don't give us a priority as the diaspora people, because any policy, any law in Uganda which they give priority, they can even pass overnight. You know them well, the way they pass the anti-homosexuality bills, the whatever, they just do it in a flash. So the fact that they are taking slow the diaspora policy framework is because, I mean, that's the priority they give us. We just come below there in the line. And that's the unfortunate part of it. So the Minister of Finance or whatever, whoever is planning to, that's what I hinted on earlier. You want to milk the cow that you don't feed. So if we are to really plan to benefit from the diaspora community or encourage them to invest, we really need to give them a priority. The government needs to give them a priority, put the frameworks in place, put everything in place. And that would have even facilitated the voting, which is becoming a lacuna, because if there was a policy framework, the Electoral Commission would have picked it up earlier, that the diaspora is voting, and they would have figured out how to carry out the process. So that's all I can say to that.
And Albert?
Yes, yes, Lynn. Sorry about that.
Wait,
I,
I'm
I,
just
go ahead.
yeah. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, I agree with what Miriam and Brian are saying. Um, I agree that that policy is outdated and needs to be worked on. I also call for more participation, which we've been saying all along. Because I don't even know who wrote that policy and who among our diaspora leaders who was involved or even participated in it. So it's again one of those where there's lack of collaboration, lack of consultation with us as the diaspora, and yet they claim to be working on some of these things that they think we're interested in. I can tell you right now, if you brought a policy that says, "Oh, we want a minister or we want a member of parliament," I cannot imagine it passing in the circles that I travel in the diaspora, because we're not interested in creating another bureaucrat or bureaucracy, another fat cat in Kampala, like some of the fishermen who have been allocated positions here to speak on behalf of the diaspora. I don't know. There's a gentleman in California. I don't even remember his name. He's been the ambassador, diaspora ambassador for forever. I've never even met the guy. I don't even know what he actually does, but he draws a salary and he has these. So I would not believe that if a diaspora policy is calling for a minister of diaspora affairs, that would be something that most of the diaspora people would support. I would rather we focus more on voting rights, because those go to the local where we come from. If I'm given voting rights, I will be participating in politics of football tourism city. I could even have an influence in electing our mayor. When I was there, I saw some garbage and some place. That place used to be spotless clean. Now I saw some nonsense coming in. So I would lend my voice to that. I'm more interested in that, having a right to participate in that political process and even vote or campaign for somebody that I want to lead that area, more than in some state minister and member of parliament to drain the taxpayers even more. So there. I want to go back to one of the things that I saw in Uganda. I gave you a good example of what I saw as a progressive project that was really impressive. These house avocados that were being grown on almost 30 acres. But I also want to, again, we're on the subject of investments. I also want to talk about what I saw in Kasese, because I did travel to Kasese. There used to be a posh hotel right there on a hill in Kasese. And they tell me that it used to belong to the late General Kazini. That place could easily have costed like millions and millions of dollars in investment, maybe 2 or 3. And that, for whatever the politics of the area and the politics of Uganda are, they've decided to let that place rot right there on the hill. So again, to my brother Brian, this goes on that conversation where we can talk, let's talk about investment, but not talk about politics. Clearly, there's a political decision that was made to let that nice facility, an investment that could actually be drawing lots of tourists, and to let it rot on top of a hill. Now, I see that, and you want me to build one like that? Again, Miriam was asking, what if tomorrow I'm not agreeing with the tweeting general? So my facility is also going to look like that? And how do my kids and grandkids benefit? So those are some of the things we have to address, whether we want to or not, whether these conversations are contentious or not. I am not kidding you. If anybody has ever been to Kasese, go and look at that facility and you'll be brought. I mean, I don't know how you would feel, but when I looked at it, I almost cried. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. This could be the highlight. It could be the most beautiful hotel in Kasese. It's built, it's rotting there because somehow somebody must have rubbed somebody in power the wrong way. But the thing is sitting there. Cousin is dead, the thing is sitting there. So those are some of the things that we're talking about. Again, like I said, you turn off the diaspora lens and look at that as part of the mountain, but it's actually $1 million investment. So
right. Yeah. Okay. All right. I like all of these ideas, and I don't know if our government is listening. Brian, as we begin to come to the conclusion of our conversation, I want to look at going forward as diaspora. Do you feel heard? Do you feel seen? Do you feel with a diaspora national policy coming on board, hopefully this time around it is not shelved, will change the status quo? Will we see a change in the diaspora community? Because in one of your articles you said that with millions of Ugandans living abroad and contributing significantly to the national economy, now is the time for the cabinet to enact a national diaspora policy that creates a dedicated diaspora agency and line ministry to formalize the relationship between Uganda and its diaspora and ensure their contributions are not only recognized but also maximized. Now, the question is also, how are we compared to other countries? Brian?
if the government of Uganda had enacted this diaspora policy 10 years ago, would be ahead of the pack in terms of other African countries in terms of developing a national diaspora policy. But because they didn't, we are behind several of them. Do we feel hard? Yes. In terms of that is exactly what they are working on. The national diaspora policy was, they kept talking about how they are working on it, how they are going to work on it, how they're going to implement it. So we feel hard in that sense. We wish, obviously, the pace of implementation was quicker than it is. But yeah, like as you know, most things in government, they can take time.
Okay. All right. Okay, Albert. I see Miriam has dropped off. I think her phone just died. The battery died. Sorry. So, Albert, please.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm saying, yeah. Go ahead.
No. Again, I couldn't agree more with what Brian is saying. So yes, we are behind, and other places like Kenya, like now they have the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Diaspora, Foreign and Diaspora Affairs. So that gives, you can see that the policy is built in. For us, we're playing catch up. We're still dealing with Diaspora Affairs Office in the Office of the President, the Diaspora Affairs Foreign Ministry, Diaspora Affairs Investment Authority. We have like 6-7 diaspora desks in Uganda. Last time I asked if they even talk to each other, I still didn't get an answer to that. I still don't know, but knowing Uganda, probably they don't. But yeah, we're playing catch up. The only thing I would add on is, yes, these government things take time, but I wouldn't mind if they take time and they're done right. I think the right way is collaboration, consultation. If they, it's not, they're not doing us a favor. The policy makers in Uganda, these bureaucrats, they're not doing us a favor. Okay, this is a mutually beneficial enterprise. Okay, we have attachments to our motherland. Our motherland, we have families there, we have friends there, and we want to contribute. We love our country. But Uganda should also think of us and say, okay, here we are. We need this expertise. We need this investment. How do we attract it? Okay, like Brian said earlier, you're better off attracting us than attracting these foreigners who have no natural, historical, even biological attachments to the country. They're only looking at the dollar. Some of our investments, some of us, by the way, our investments in Uganda have no relationship with the return on investment. I'm not kidding you. I have a very good friend who invested in a project in Fort Potro, built and spent over $600,000 building about maybe 6 or 7 rental houses. And she candidly said, you know what? This was just one of those where I wanted to build a place and name it after my mom, but it's not a project that I will do. And this is an educated woman, a business consultant. So some of us invest in Uganda on those emotional attachments where we're really not looking about a return on investment. We're not really being driven by the dollar. So the government the policymakers have to actually consider some of these things and say, you know what? These are people who already love this place and have attachments to it. Let's not really harass them. Let's not consider, which political candidate they support, what political leanings they are. Let's look at how we can mutually gain from each other involving in these projects. If they take that approach, I think even though we are lagging behind, as Brian is saying, we can leap ahead because we have the advantage. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. But somehow we always try to, but we really don't have to. We can look at some of the things that have worked in some of our neighboring countries like Ethiopia, Kenya, and others, and copy those and even leap ahead of them by being progressive.
Right. Okay. And conclusively, I'm going to pick your mind, Brian, moving forward with the conversion behind us, with the national policy, diaspora national policy in the making, and with all the hope that we have. What are your projections for 2025 as the diaspora community? And will we see all these come to pass?
I don't make any projections. If I could, I would own a church like Prophet Mbonye and be making projections and be very wealthy.
Right.
What I can say is, like I said, the convention and the discussion that are taking place about the national diaspora policy was a good first step. People like Miriam and Albert airing their frustrations with what's going on. That is very much positive. It's what we would expect. That is feedback, and hopefully the policymakers are receiving this feedback. Like I mentioned, within 6 hours of the convention ending, they sent out a feedback form, and hopefully people who shared Miriam and Albert's sentiments, and hopefully Miriam herself who attended and must have received that form. Hopefully she wrote down what her opinions are, because it's one thing to come on the talk show like this and speak what you're saying. It's one thing to actually write it down so that it actually gets the right channels to the
Mhm.
people who would be planning the next convention. So I would say let's keep at it. Let's keep doing what we're doing. Let's keep our leg on the gas pedal. Let's not let up. Let's continue talking about these issues. Let's make sure they are not forgotten, especially as we go into the political season. So let's make sure we are at the minds of the policymakers when it comes time to passing these laws in parliament. Because I think part of the problem is people in diaspora work too much. They're in Uganda for just a few weeks, so they don't have enough. They are just visiting friends and family, and maybe following up on personal projects, so they don't get time to really engage the policymakers at extended levels. So their issues are easily forgotten. So the issues are not the same way like the trader in Kampala who they know has a vote, they know is always harassing them whenever they go to their constituencies. So it's easy to forget the diaspora. And
Mm.
my what I would ask my fellow diaspora is let's make sure that we're not easy to forget. Let's keep making noise basically. And we thank you,
Right.
Lynn, for helping us continue making this noise.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Albert.
Yes, Lynn. Brian, please qualify that constructive noise. There's a difference. So, yes, thank you again, Elaine, and thank you, Brian, for an engaging conversation. So, my prediction, as I was talking to people in Uganda, and I do really talk, I really do talk, like I said, from retired people to current officers in serving in the government, to UPDF for people. I do talk because one of the things that I've learned in life is that I don't like shooting and off the cuff, and then or speaking off the cuff, and then you have to eat your words, or you don't know what you're talking about. So I really, when I go to Uganda, I really do engage in these conversations with the different stakeholders, different people, different policymakers to really engage with the country, because I have a stake in this in the country. And like some of the people we were discussing, I actually do feel that Uganda belongs to me. Now, it's something that I force myself, because every time people try to tell you you're not Ugandan, you're not here, they don't even acknowledge you, they want to shut you down. So, yeah, but I do force myself to believe that way, and I do believe that way. What I saw, if I was to have an overall theme in what conversations I was having, especially from politicians in Uganda, there's this, I think Alan Greenspan used to call it the irrational exuberance about the incoming president of the US. I think I can predict that there will be some disappointment, because the politics of the US, Ugandans look at the politics of the US through the lens of Uganda, and the two are not even close. The US, the president will come in, and yes, there will be policy changes on the margins, but usually the theme that unites all of them is that they work for American people's interests.
Right.
So whether you disagree with Trump or whether you disagree with Biden doesn't make the difference. You could wake anybody up and make them U.S. president, and they will have that commonality. They will work for the interests of the American people.
Right.
I think that's something that Uganda and Ugandans could learn. So this idea that somehow President Donald Trump, incoming, will have a different policy towards Uganda and advance Ugandan interest is that hope is misplaced, because the American presidents work for the American people, not Ugandan people. Our
Right.
people should learn to advocate and work on relationships, on mending relationships with the U.S. administration. If they have to build new ones with this incoming administration, they should make an effort to do that instead of counting on whatever they had during the campaign or this and that, that somehow this new incoming administration is going to work for the interests of Uganda. That is not their mandate, and that is not what they will do.
Right. Right. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Miriam. Sorry we lost you there. It was a wonderful conversation. I hope we will have more. There's so much happening. We couldn't put it together. Uganda signed and became part of the BRICS. Is also another interesting conversation. We need to have Albert and Brian if you get time. There's so much indeed that is going on. So we will be catching you again next time here on Civic Space TV. Otherwise, I wish you the very best of the new year 2025. See you soon.